My adoptive parents only took me in to use me as their son's servant while ignoring how violent he was to me. So I unleashed their darkest truth and turned the tables in the most devastating way possible. I was 12 when I finally got adopted. My new parents hugged me and promised I would never have to go through anything like that again. And I believed them until I met their biological son, Tyler. We were the same age, same grade, even looked alike. And on the second week of living with the Hendersons, he came home and hit the living shut out of me. All because he got a bad grade at school. I didn't want to tell my new parents and be known as a tattletale. So I just made it very clear I was in pain by limping and moving very slowly. We were sitting at the kitchen table when they finally said something. Gerbert, my name. What happened to you? Tyler spoke for me. Oh, that was all me, he said with a smirk. I got an effing C in math class again. My mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Tyler has a severe academic anxiety that manifests as physical outbursts. The last foster child couldn't handle it. We had to send him back after Tyler broke his arm. But you're different, Dad added quickly. You're stronger. We could see it in your file. All those homes you survived. You can handle this. Well, if there's one thing being a foster kid has taught me, it's that you have to stand up for yourself. I'm not really comfortable with being hit. Gerbert, my dad interrupted. Remember the situation we took you out of? The one where your innocence was violated almost every night and no one cared? My mom chimed in. It would be a shame for us to have to send you back, wouldn't it? At that moment, everything became clear. I wasn't their son. I was Tyler's punching bag with a social security number. The only place I felt normal was in my classes. Turns out, even after everything, I was good at school. Like, really good. I got straight A's without even trying, and all the teachers loved me, and I knew if my parents found out they'd somehow ruin it. So for months, I let them believe I was failing, just like their loser son. I was sitting in my room doing homework when my mom burst in. Hey, she exclaimed, her smile practically radiating through the house. Me and your father just got your report card. Congratulations! She kissed my forehead, and I tensed up, bracing myself for the worst. We had no idea you were so smart. Tyler got all F's. Do you want me to tutor him? No. Sorry for raising my voice. I mean, no, not really, she told me. There was a long pause before she continued. You two look so alike. I think it would be best if you took his tests, and he took yours. Just swap names. If I know you and your crazy family can count me out, I wanted to yell. But then I thought about the group home flashbacks. Older kids taking my food, my innocence being stolen at age 6, sleeping with one eye open. Even being Tyler's personal homework slave was better than going back. So instead, I folded like a wet paper towel. Of course I'm down, I exclaimed. She left, taking my report card with her. The system started immediately. Monday morning, third period, I walked into Tyler's math class while he took my spot in mine. The teacher barely glanced up when I wrote Tyler Henderson on the test. 90 minutes later, I aced it. Meanwhile, Tyler was deliberately failing mine, drawing deek pictures in the margins of Gerbert's test. And despite his grades getting 100 times better, he never stopped hitting me. He just got more creative. He'd punch me exactly where bruises wouldn't show during gym class. Called it strategic anger management. The Hendersons bought him a car for his improved grades. I got a bus pass. The worst part? Watching teachers praise Tyler for my work. Mrs. Garcia pulled him aside after I'd written a perfect essay on To Kill a Mockingbird under his name. This shows real emotional depth, Tyler. Have you considered joining the literary magazine? He laughed in her face and said reading was for losers. She thought he was being modest. By sophomore year, Tyler had discovered the power of his fake success. He'd walk around school like he owned the place, letting everyone know about his academic comeback. Yeah, I used to be stupid, he'd tell girls at parties. But then I just decided to lock in. Mind over matter, you know. Those words circled in my head like sharks. So much so that for the next exam I took under his name, I purposely did badly. Not an F, just a C-. But my petty reign of terror was cut short, because the day the report cards came out, my dad dragged me out of bed at 3 a.m. What he did next was something I hadn't experienced since the foster home. When I finally gasped out that I'd never do it again, he patted my soaked head like I was a dog who'd learned not to pee on the carpet. Good boy, now go make Tyler breakfast. He has a big test today. That's when I stopped being angry and started being smart. I realized they'd shown me exactly what they were. Criminals who'd torment a child to protect their image, and criminals always make mistakes. I stood in the kitchen making Tyler's eggs exactly how he liked them, sunny side up with the edges crispy, while my mind raced through every bruise and mark on my body. The fresh ones from last night throbbed under my shirt. I'd need to document them later, but right now, I had to play the perfect foster son. My hands moved automatically, buttering the toast just right, arranging everything on the plate the way Tyler demanded. The breakfast table felt like a minefield that morning. Mrs. Henderson sat across from me with her coffee, scrolling through her phone with that fake smile plastered on her face. She looked up suddenly, her eyes bright with excitement. Oh, Gerbert, I almost forgot. Tyler's SAT is coming up next month. She stirred her coffee casually. My friend works at the testing center. She's very understanding about Tyler's special needs. My stomach dropped. Taking his regular tests was one thing, but the SAT, that was federal fraud, real prison time fraud. I kept my face neutral and nodded, focusing on cutting my eggs. Tyler reached for the coffee pot, and his elbow knocked it toward me. The scalding liquid splashed across my hand. I bit down hard on my tongue, refusing to flinch or pull away as the heat seared my skin. Tyler watched me closely, his eyes narrowing when I didn't react. Careful there, foster boy, he muttered, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. Something had changed in me since that 3 a.m. wake-up call, and he'd noticed. At school, I kept my head down and moved through the hallways like a ghost. My hand throbbed where the coffee had burned it, but I couldn't go to the nurse. Too many questions. I slipped into English class just as the bell rang. Gerbert, can I see you for a moment? Ms. Mrs. Garcia called from her desk. My heart hammered as I approached. She waited until the other students settled into their seats before speaking quietly. I've noticed some bruising on your arms, and you've been moving stiffly lately. Her dark eyes searched mine with genuine concern. Is everything okay at home? The words wanted to spill out so badly, but I thought about the Hendersons' reputation, their donations to the school, the way everyone loved them. Who would believe me? Just been playing basketball at the park, I lied smoothly. Got a little too competitive. She didn't look convinced, but nodded slowly. My door is always open if you need to talk. During lunch, I sat alone in my usual corner of the cafeteria, picking at my sandwich. Tyler held court at the popular table, surrounded by his friends. His voice carried across the room. Yeah, my grandparents set up this trust fund for college, he bragged. But it only kicks in if I get into a top school. Good thing I turned my grades around, right? Harvard, here I come. His friends laughed and congratulated him. One of them asked how he'd managed such a dramatic improvement. Just stop being lazy, Tyler shrugged. Turns out I'm actually a genius when I apply myself. The sandwich turned to cardboard in my mouth. They weren't just using me for high school. This was their long-term plan, riding my intelligence all the way to Tyler's trust fund. How many years would they keep me trapped? After school, I trudged up to my room, exhausted from maintaining the facade all day. But as soon as I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. My dresser drawers were slightly open. Papers on my desk had been moved. The air smelled like Mrs. Henderson's perfume. My journal. I dropped my backpack and rushed to my mattress, lifting the corner where I'd hidden it. Gone. Panic flooded through me as I tore apart my room, checking every hiding spot. That journal had everything. My documentation of Tyler's abuse, the test swapping scheme, dates and times and details. Without thinking, I stormed downstairs to the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson stood at the counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife moved in precise, deliberate strokes. Where is it? I demanded. She didn't look up. Where is what, dear? My journal. You took it. The knife paused mid-chop. She turned to face me, still holding it, the blade catching the light. Privacy is earned, not given, Gerbert. Her voice was sweet, but she gripped the knife handle tighter than necessary, bringing it down on a carrot with unnecessary force. We're a family. Families don't keep secrets. I stared at the knife in her hand, at the way she smiled while holding it. Message received. That evening, I found my journal on my bed. Several pages had been torn out, the ragged edges mocking me. Tyler's fingerprints were visible on the torn pages, deliberate and taunting. Every entry about the abuse, every documentation of what they'd done, gone. At dinner, Mr. Henderson made an announcement. We've decided to upgrade our home security, he said, cutting into his steak. Cameras throughout the house, for everyone's safety, of course. Where exactly? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, all the common areas, hallways, exits, that sort of thing, he smiled. And we'll have monitors in our bedroom, so we can keep an eye on things. They were closing every escape route, watching every move. Even my room wouldn't be private anymore, with cameras in the hallway monitoring when I left or entered. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my only real friend at school. Haven't seen you in forever. Wanna hang out this weekend? I stared at the message, realizing how completely the Hendersons had isolated me. Between Tyler's strategic violence, the constant homework, and their surveillance, I'd lost touch with everyone who might help me. Late that night, I waited until the house was quiet before creeping to the bathroom. I locked the door and pulled out my phone, setting the timer function. In the mirror, I carefully photographed each bruise, each mark Tyler had left on me. The camera flash illuminated purple fingerprints on my arms, welts across my ribs. I created a folder on my phone and labeled it Tyler's Achievement Awards. If they found it, they'd think it was academic stuff. The irony wasn't lost on me. The bathroom door handle rattled. I quickly shut off my phone and flushed the toilet, running the sink for cover. Tyler stood in the hallway when I opened the door, his eyes cold and calculating. What were you doing in there so long? Using the bathroom, I said, trying to step past him. He shoved me against the wall, his forearm across my throat. I know you're planning something, foster boy. I can smell it on you. I met his gaze steadily, not struggling. I'm not planning anything. He studied my face for a long moment before releasing me. Good, because if you try anything at all, you'll wish you were back in that group home getting passed around. The next morning, Mrs. Henderson dropped another bomb at breakfast. Guess what? I've volunteered to be a parent liaison at your school. She beamed at me. I'll be there every day, helping in the office, attending classes. Isn't that wonderful? My safe space, the one place where I could breathe, gone. She'd be watching me there too, making sure I stayed in line. During study hall, I managed to grab the family iPad while Mrs. Henderson was distracted talking to another parent volunteer. I quickly opened the Messages app, scrolling through old conversations. There it was. Messages from someone named James, dated 6 months ago. Please help me. I can't take it anymore. Tyler broke my ribs this time. I'm scared. The messages stopped abruptly, the last one reading, please don't let them hurt me anymore. James, the previous foster kid, the one whose arm Tyler had broken. But these messages suggested so much worse. In chemistry class, Tyler slipped me a note with his test answers. They were all wrong, deliberately so. I'd have to correct them while the teacher watched, making it look natural. As I changed each answer, I felt the teacher's eyes on me, suspicious. Mrs. Henderson had scheduled a parent-teacher conference during my library period, my only unsupervised time at school. Now, I'd have to sit there while she discussed Tyler's remarkable improvement with teachers who praised my work under his name. I tried one more time with the school counselor, choosing my words carefully. I'm worried about a friend, I said. They're in a bad situation at home. The counselor, Mrs. Patterson, leaned back in her chair. What kind of situation? Their family expects things from them, makes them do things they're not comfortable with. She frowned. Are you talking about the Hendersons? Because they're pillars of this community. They've saved so many foster children, donated so much to our programs. Whatever you think you're seeing, I'm sure you're misunderstanding. Dead end. Another door closed. confused, but I wasn't giving up. During Tyler's next test, I took photos of his actual work before swapping our papers. F after F, wrong answer after wrong answer. Evidence. While organizing Mrs. Henderson's home office as part of my chores, I found a folder marked foster care. Inside were documents showing they received $800 monthly for me, but there was more. Applications for other foster children, with notes in the margins. Honor roll student, academic potential, similar appearance to Tyler. They'd done this before. They were planning to do it again. At Sunday dinner with Tyler's grandparents, I watched them fawn over their grandson's transformation. We always knew Tyler had it in him, his grandmother said, patting his hand. Such a smart boy. She slipped me a $20 bill when no one was looking. For all your hard work, she whispered, and I realized she knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew something. The pattern was clear now. The Hendersons specifically requested foster kids who could boost Tyler's grades, kids who were vulnerable, who had nowhere else to go, kids like me and James. Sarah, Tyler's ex-girlfriend, approached me after school one day. It's weird, she said. Tyler was always so dumb when we dated, could barely write a text without spelling errors. Then suddenly he's writing these brilliant essays. I chose my words carefully. People change. Not that much, she insisted. I still have his old texts. He couldn't even spell definitely. Now he's using words like ubiquitous in casual conversation. A seed of hope. I suggested maybe something was off about Tyler's transformation. Sarah's eyes lit up with recognition. He still can't explain his own essays. I asked him about the symbolism in his mockingbird analysis, and he went completely blank. Tyler must have seen us talking because that afternoon in the locker room, he cornered me. His fists found all the spots that wouldn't show, precise strikes that left me gasping. Stay away from Sarah, he hissed, or next time will be worse. That evening at dinner, Mr. Henderson mentioned casually that Sarah's father had just lost a major contract with his company. Such a shame, he said, not looking at me. These things happen in business. The threat was clear. Cross us, and we'll destroy your family too. Mrs. Henderson started requiring me to attend Tyler's social events as his tutor. The first was a pool party at his friend's house. I sat in the corner with textbooks while Tyler splashed around, accepting congratulations for his academic turnaround. Mrs. Henderson introduced me to other parents as Tyler's charity case, the poor foster kid they'd graciously taken in. The humiliation burned worse than any bruise. I recognized the psychological torture for what it was. They wanted to break my spirit, make me grateful for whatever scraps they threw my way. That night, I started a new journal, this time hidden inside the lining of an old jacket in my closet. I documented every instance of forced tutoring, every public humiliation, every strategic placement of me as Tyler's inferior. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at the house unexpectedly. I was doing Tyler's homework in the living room when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Henderson answered, her smile faltering when she saw who it was. Marcus pushed past her politely but firmly, spotting me on the couch. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. Me surrounded by Tyler's assignments, the new security cameras mounted in every corner, the way I instinctively shrank when Mrs. Henderson moved. He mouthed something I couldn't catch at first. Then I read his lips clearly. The profanity was obvious even without sound. He'd seen how I acted around the family, the fear I couldn't quite hide. Mrs. Henderson recovered quickly, turning on the charm. She offered Marcus cookies, asked about his family, complimented his shoes, but as she led him to the kitchen for refreshments, I managed to slip a folded note into his pocket. 4 words, scrawled in desperation. Help me. Marcus palmed it smoothly, his face never changing. He stayed for exactly 15 minutes, making small talk while I sweated through Tyler's calculus homework. When he left, he squeezed my shoulder. Message received. The next morning at school, I created a backup email account using the library computer. The Hendersons monitored my regular accounts, but they didn't know about this one. I started forwarding myself photos, documenting dates and times, building a case. During lunch, I found a payphone near the gym that still worked. My hands shook as I dialed child services. The hold music played for 30 minutes. 30 minutes of looking over my shoulder, expecting Mrs. Henderson to materialize. Finally, I hung up in frustration. The system that was supposed to protect kids like me was overwhelmed, understaffed, useless. Marcus started texting me that afternoon, but in code. We pretended to discuss a video game we'd never played. Need backup in this level meant he was checking if I was in danger. Boss fight tonight meant the Hendersons were escalating. Found a cheat code meant he had information. I discovered Tyler's college application essays in the trash behind the school. All in my handwriting, my words, my ideas. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. He was aiming high with my brain. I photographed each page before Tyler showed up and burned them in the parking lot, watching me the whole time to make sure I didn't keep copies. Sarah found me after school, her sister Catherine standing beside her. Catherine was older, maybe 20, with tired eyes and a knowing look. Catherine revealed that she'd gone to school with James, the previous foster kid. The Hendersons had told everyone he'd been sent back to the system for violence, but Catherine knew better. James had run away, terrified. He was living in a shelter 2 towns over, still looking over his shoulder. At dinner, I carefully mentioned James, watching their reactions. Mr. Henderson's jaw tightened like a vice. Mrs. Henderson's smile turned plastic. Tyler smirked knowingly. Mr. Henderson set down his fork deliberately. His words came out measured, controlled. Some children simply couldn't be helped, he explained. Some were too damaged, too difficult. The Hendersons had tried their best with James, but he'd been ungrateful, violent, unstable. The lies rolled off his tongue like water. Mrs. Henderson nodded along, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Tyler's smirk widened. The SAT loomed 2 weeks away. Federal fraud, real consequences. The thought made my hands shake as I cleared the table. Mrs. Henderson noticed and patted my shoulder, her touch making my skin crawl. Through Sarah's sister, I tracked down James. The meeting happened at a McDonald's halfway between towns. pounds. He looked smaller than I'd expected, hunched over a cold coffee, flinching whenever the door opened. His hands shook as he told me his story. The Hendersons had done the same thing to him. Test swapping, grade fraud, strategic abuse. But when he'd tried to refuse the SAT scheme, they'd threatened to report him as violent to every foster agency in the state. No family would take a violent kid. He'd age out on the streets, so he ran, left everything behind and disappeared. The broken arm Tyler bragged about? James showed me the x-rays he'd kept. Multiple fractures, months of healing. Tyler had used a baseball bat. Back at school, cracks started showing in Tyler's facade. Teachers began noticing the disconnect between his written work and verbal abilities. Ms. Garcia asked him about symbolism in an essay he'd supposedly written. Tyler went completely blank, mumbling something about needing to review his notes. The math teacher caught him unable to solve a basic equation on the board. The history teacher noticed he couldn't discuss any of the themes from his papers. Whispers started. Questions arose. The Hendersons made their next move during a family meeting. They offered me a deal. Continue helping Tyler through college, and they'd pay for my education too. 4 years at any school I wanted, all expenses covered. All I had to do was keep being Tyler's brain. I saw it for what it was. 4 more years of slavery. 4 more years of bruises and humiliation. 4 more years of watching Tyler take credit for my mind while I lived in his shadow. Teachers started comparing notes in the faculty lounge. Ms. Garcia remembered similar writing from a foster student years ago. The math teacher recalled another kid who'd suddenly stopped attending. Patterns emerged. Mrs. Henderson's perfect image began to crack. When confronted about the mounting suspicions at a parent-teacher conference, she snarled at me in the parking lot before catching herself. The mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the monster underneath. I discovered more evidence in Mr. Henderson's home office. Tax documents showing they'd claimed me as a dependent while pocketing the foster care money. Educational expenses they'd never paid. Years of financial fraud documented in their own handwriting. Ms. Garcia pulled me aside after class one day. She knew something was wrong. She'd started keeping copies of all student work, noting the similarities between Tyler's essays and papers from previous years. She couldn't prove anything yet, but she was building a case. Marcus created a cloud storage account from his house, sharing access through a gaming app the Hendersons didn't monitor. When I logged in, my heart stopped. He'd already uploaded gigabytes of evidence I'd smuggled out on USB drives hidden in my shoes. Photos, documents, recordings, everything. Sarah chose to help despite her father's warnings. The contract loss? She'd investigated and found it was due to a competitor's better bid, not the Hendersons' influence. The timing had been coincidental. They'd used it as a threat, but they didn't have the power they pretended to have. Our small network met secretly at Marcus's house. Me, Marcus, Sarah, and Catherine. We planned carefully, knowing we had one shot. The evidence was overwhelming, but we needed to present it right. I refused Sarah's suggestion to plant fake evidence. We had enough real documentation. We needed to do this clean, do this right. No shortcuts that could backfire. During a heated family argument about college applications, Tyler slipped. He mentioned not understanding the essay he wrote, catching himself too late. His parents exchanged panicked looks. I recorded it all on my phone hidden under the table. James agreed to provide a sworn statement, though terror still gripped him. His hands shook as he wrote out his experience. Every detail, every abuse, every forced test. Evidence of a pattern spanning years. Tyler's girlfriend dumped him very publicly in the cafeteria. She announced to everyone within earshot that he was actually dumb, that he'd been lying about his intelligence. The words spread like wildfire. Students started noticing the discrepancies. Social media posts questioned Tyler's transformation. A hashtag started trending locally. The Hendersons' carefully constructed image began crumbling. Marcus's older brother, a law student, reviewed our evidence. His assessment was clear. Multiple crimes documented. Fraud, abuse, tax evasion. The Hendersons had left a paper trail a mile wide. When confronted about the mounting suspicions, Mrs. Henderson finally broke character completely. She snarled at me in the kitchen, her real face showing. Then she caught herself, smoothing her features back into that fake smile. But I'd seen the truth. Teachers who once praised the Hendersons started distancing themselves. Ms. Garcia apologized for not seeing it sooner. She admitted she'd suspected something with James, but had no proof. Now she did. The Hendersons started making mistakes. They forgot to check my backup phone. They missed my evidence gathering. Their perfect system was falling apart as pressure mounted from all sides. Sarah's sister revealed the final piece. James hadn't just been physically abused. He'd been forced into the exact same test-taking scheme. She had Henderson documents showing the pattern refined over years. This wasn't their first victim, or their second. This was a system. I made sure Tyler's younger cousins stayed away from the situation. During tense family gatherings, I distracted them with games and stories. Whatever happened, innocent kids wouldn't be collateral damage. Ms. Garcia, the counselor who'd dismissed me, and 3 other teachers formed an unofficial alliance. They couldn't act officially yet, but they watched out for me, made sure I was never alone with Tyler, documented everything they saw. Mrs. Henderson tried to charm Marcus's parents, showing up with a pie and compliments, but Marcus had already told them enough. They were polite but distant, not buying her act. The grandparents visited unexpectedly one afternoon. Tyler was struggling with basic math homework, and without thinking, I started explaining the concept. His grandmother's face changed as she watched. The realization dawned slowly but surely. Word spread through the parent network. Something was off about the Henderson family situation. People started asking questions. Why did Tyler never study with friends? Why couldn't he help with group projects? Why did his verbal abilities not match his written work? During a computer lab session, I used Marcus's login to access our cloud storage. All the evidence compiled into one protected document. Dates, times, photos, recordings, everything organized and ready. The SAT was 48 hours away. Decision time. Take the test and commit federal fraud, or expose everything now. The testing center Mrs. Henderson's friend worked at expected me to show up as Tyler. During a family photo shoot for Tyler's college applications, the photographer noticed my bruises. He saw the family dynamic, the way I flinched when Tyler moved too quickly. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke volumes. Reality hit hard. Exposing the Hendersons meant giving up any chance at college funding. I'd age out of foster care with nothing. No safety net, no support. But continuing meant selling my soul for 4 more years. At a school assembly about academic integrity, I stood up during the question period. My voice carried across the auditorium as I asked about test-taking fraud. What would happen to students who had others take their tests? What about SAT fraud specifically? Tyler visibly sweated in his seat. The principal's eyes narrowed as he looked at Tyler, then at me. The question hung in the air like a bomb. Parents started questioning why Tyler never studied with their kids anymore, why he couldn't explain basic concepts from his supposed essays, why his in-class performance didn't match his grades. The accumulated evidence created an undeniable pattern. Even the Hendersons' sterling reputation couldn't overcome the mountain of documentation. Truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it. Mrs. Henderson made a last-ditch attempt to destroy evidence, but she discovered I'd hidden copies everywhere. A USB in her own jewelry box, files on school computers, photos backed up in multiple clouds. She'd taught me to be thorough, and I'd learned well. The Hendersons planned to send me back immediately. Emergency removal, they called it, claiming I was unstable, violent, a danger to their family. But I'd already arranged to stay with Marcus's family. The paperwork was filed. They couldn't touch me. When Mr. Henderson tried to physically grab me to prevent me from leaving, Marcus's father intervened. He stepped between us, his presence a wall the Hendersons couldn't cross. Other parents materialized, watching, witnesses everywhere. The house of cards was falling, every lie exposed, every manipulation revealed. The Hendersons' perfect image shattered like glass, and everyone could see the ugly truth underneath. Tyler cracked under the mounting pressure during his grandparents' next visit. They'd arrived unannounced again, this time with questions about his college applications. When they asked him to explain the themes in one of his essays, Tyler's face went blank. His grandmother pulled out a printed copy, pointing to specific passages. Tyler stammered, unable to articulate basic concepts from work he'd supposedly written. The grandmother's eyes moved between Tyler and me, understanding crystallizing on her face. She folded the essay carefully, tucking it into her purse. The grandfather's jaw tightened as he watched his grandson struggle with simple follow-up questions about the application materials. That evening, Tyler cornered me in my room, desperation replacing his usual arrogance. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me as he demanded I fix this mess. His grip left new bruises, but his panic showed cracks in the family's foundation. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, pulling Tyler away while maintaining her practiced smile for the grandparents downstairs. The next morning brought an emergency family meeting. The grandparents sat across from the Hendersons while I served coffee, playing my role. Tyler's grandfather produced a folder containing years of Tyler's actual schoolwork, assignments his teachers had given directly to the grandparents during elementary school visits. The handwriting, the intelligence level, everything contradicted Tyler's recent academic miracle. Mrs. Henderson attempted damage control, weaving elaborate explanations about tutoring and late development. But when the grandfather asked Tyler to solve a basic algebra problem, the truth became undeniable. Tyler threw his pencil down, finally admitting he'd never written any of the essays or taken any of the tests. His confession poured out in angry bursts, blaming everyone but himself. The grandparents' horror deepened as Tyler revealed the full scope, the test swapping, the systematic fraud, the abuse used to maintain control. He even mentioned James, describing the baseball bat incident with disturbing pride. The grandmother's hand covered her mouth as she processed years of deception. Financial documents emerged from the grandfather's briefcase, bank statements showing regular deposits from the Hendersons, supposedly for Tyler's tutoring. The grandparents had been unknowingly funding the exploitation. The grandfather's hands shook as he spread the papers across the table, calculating how much money had supported this abuse. Mrs. Henderson's mask finally shattered completely. She screamed at Tyler for ruining everything, for being too stupid to maintain the lie. Mr. Henderson grabbed her arm, trying to restore calm, but she shoved him away. Years of careful image management crumbled in minutes. The grandmother stood, announcing they were cutting off all financial support immediately. She tore up documents related to Tyler's trust fund, the pieces falling like snow onto the kitchen table. The grandfather added that they'd be contacting their lawyer about recovering the money they'd already provided. Child services arrived within hours, alerted by the grandparents. The caseworkers interviewed me separately, documenting injuries and taking photographs. Marcus's family had already filed paperwork to serve as emergency placement. The Hendersons couldn't object with their parents-in-law supporting my removal. School board members launched an immediate investigation into Tyler's academic records. Parent complaints had reached critical mass. Teachers submitted evidence they'd been quietly collecting. Ms. Garcia provided her documented suspicions, spanning multiple years and multiple foster children. The community response was swift and decisive. Parents pulled their children from study groups at the Henderson house. Neighbors who'd once admired them now whispered in grocery store aisles. The family's church quietly suggested they find somewhere else to worship. Mr. Henderson attempted one final manipulation, creating social media posts, painting me as a troubled teen who'd corrupted their son. He uploaded carefully edited videos showing moments where I looked aggressive or unstable. The breakfast surface scene where I'd stood up to them became evidence of my violent tendencies. Marcus responded immediately, posting full context for every edited clip. Security camera footage from their own system showed Tyler attacking me moments before each aggressive reaction. The backfire was immediate and devastating. Comments flooded in from other foster children who'd lived with the Hendersons, sharing similar experiences. Local parent Facebook groups exploded with discussions. Screenshots of Tyler's old social media posts, full of spelling errors and poor grammar, contrasted sharply with his supposed recent essays. Parents shared stories of Tyler being unable to help their children with homework, despite his alleged transformation. The school board meeting drew an overflow crowd. Parents demanded answers about how this fraud had continued for years. Teachers testified about their suspicions and the pressure they'd felt to stay quiet. The Hendersons sat in the back row, their influence evaporating with each testimony. Some community members initially defended the Hendersons, citing their charity work and church involvement. But as more evidence emerged, even their staunchest supporters distanced themselves. The family that had once dominated PTA meetings and school functions became pariahs. Foster care investigators interviewed James via video call. His testimony, combined with medical records and my documentation, revealed a clear pattern of exploitation. Other former foster children came forward, describing similar experiences. The Hendersons' foster license was revoked immediately. The grandparents hired forensic accountants to trace financial fraud. Years of tax documents showed the Hendersons claiming educational expenses while pocketing foster care payments. The IRS notification arrived shortly after, beginning an audit that would unravel their finances. Tyler's college acceptances were rescinded one by one as admissions offices learned of the fraud. Harvard's rejection letter arrived first, followed quickly by Yale and Princeton. His dreams of prestige crumbled with each thin envelope. Faced with mounting evidence and community pressure, the Hendersons had no choice. They agreed to sign over guardianship to Marcus's family rather than face public hearings. The alternative was a foster care trial that would make every detail public record. Moving day came quickly. I packed my few belongings while the Hendersons avoided eye contact. Tyler made one last attempt at intimidation, but his grandparents were there to supervise. His grandfather physically stepped between us when Tyler moved too close. Marcus's family welcomed me with genuine warmth. His parents had prepared a real bedroom, not just a space to exist. That first night, I slept without fear for the first time in years. No cameras watching, no footsteps in the hallway, no morning violence to dread. The Hendersons listed their house for sale within a month. The community's judgment made daily life unbearable. Former friends crossed streets to avoid them. Their teaching positions became untenable as parents requested their children be removed from their classes. Mrs. Henderson made one final attempt at manipulation, filing a complaint claiming I'd stolen from them. But bank records clearly showed they'd stolen from me, years of foster care payments that never went to my care. The complaint was dismissed, adding another layer to their humiliation. They left town in the middle of the night, moving several states away. Their forwarding address led to a small apartment, a far cry from their previous suburban paradise. Tyler's car was sold to cover moving expenses. The family that had built everything on image found themselves with nothing but truth. The school board implemented new oversight policies for academic performance. Teachers received training on recognizing exploitation of foster children. What happened to me became a cautionary tale that prompted real change. Scholarship offers arrived from unexpected sources. Colleges that had followed the local scandal wanted to support a student who'd shown such resilience. Ms. Garcia wrote recommendation letters that told my real story, not Tyler's fabricated one. James and I stayed in contact, bonding over shared survival. He'd found stable housing and was working toward his GED. We became resources for other foster kids, teaching them to recognize exploitation patterns. Our pain transformed into purpose. Marcus's family provided the stability I'd never known. Family dinners meant conversation, not interrogation. Homework was mine to complete, my achievements to claim. They celebrated my acceptance letters with genuine pride. 6 months after leaving the Hendersons, I stood at a podium wearing graduation regalia. My valedictorian speech touched on resilience and finding your own worth. I spoke about systems that fail vulnerable children and communities that enable abuse through willful blindness. The audience included my chosen family, Marcus and his parents, Sarah and Catherine, Ms. Garcia and the teachers who'd finally acted. Even Tyler's grandparents attended, their support a form of apology for years of unknowing complicity. Meanwhile, the Hendersons struggled in their new location. Without their reputation and connections, they were just another family getting by. Tyler worked minimum wage, his dreams of easy success shattered. The premium they'd placed on image left them with nothing when that image crumbled. My academic brilliance, no longer stolen for someone else's benefit, opened doors I'd never imagined. Full scholarships, research opportunities, a future built on my own merit. The intelligence they'd exploited became my path to freedom. The foster care system, while still flawed, implemented better monitoring for academic exploitation. Caseworkers received training on recognizing the signs. Other children would be protected from what I'd endured. Tyler's grandparents established a scholarship fund for foster children pursuing higher education. Their guilt over unknowingly enabling abuse transformed into action. They insisted I help select recipients, ensuring the money went to those who'd earned their achievements. I chose a college far from that town, but I carried its lessons with me. Trust, once shattered, rebuilt slowly through consistent care from Marcus's family. Therapy helped process trauma that went deeper than physical bruises. My story spread through foster care networks, not as gossip, but as guidance. Social workers shared it in training sessions. Foster children learned to document abuse and build support networks. What the Hendersons did to me became a blueprint for what to watch for and how to escape. Tyler attempted to contact me once, a rambling message about how I'd ruined his life. I didn't respond. His inability to take responsibility showed he'd learned nothing. The Hendersons had created a monster who believed he deserved success without effort, and now he faced reality without their protection. I graduated summa fluid laude, my achievements entirely my own. The stage walk felt different when the diploma had my name on work I'd actually done. No one could take that away or claim credit for my success.